You're listening to the Guernsey Past Podcast. Take a journey back to Guernsey's past.
Okay, so today we're going on a deep dive, and we're heading back to 1882 to the island of Guernsey.
All right.
And we're looking at this very strange case, I think you'll agree,
Okay.
of John LePage.
John LePage.
Now, this is a guy who was, let's just say, known for causing a little bit of trouble, especially when it came to the street lamps of St. Peter Port.
I see.
So, those gas lights that were kind of new and fancy back then.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he apparently had a bit of a habit of smashing them.
Really?
Yeah. And it gets even weirder because when he was hauled into court,
Oh, I bet it does.
his defense was basically, well, I thought I owned it.
He owned the street lamp.
That's what he claimed.
Wow. Okay, so right off the bat, we've got a mystery on our hands.
We do.
And a pretty good story.
Absolutely. So let's dive in and see what we can uncover about this John LePage and his vendetta against the gaslights.
Yeah, let's try and shed some light on this.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so 1882 Guernsey. Not exactly the bustling metropolis we might imagine today.
Definitely not.
Life was slower, simpler, but probably a lot harder in many ways.
Right. I mean, think about no electricity, no cars,
Yeah.
everything running on a completely different pace.
Exactly. Gaslighting was still relatively new at this point. And you can imagine for the people of Guernsey, these lamps must have been like a marvel of technology.
Oh, yeah, a real symbol of progress.
Exactly. They brought light to the darkness, literally,
Literally.
but also figuratively. They kind of represented this advancement of society.
I could see that. And wouldn't they have been especially important in a place like St. Peter Port, the main harbor town?
Oh, absolutely vital for safety and trade.
So smashing one of these lamps, it wouldn't have been just a prank.
Oh, no, definitely not. It would have been seen as a serious act of vandalism.
Damaging a symbol of progress.
And order. Remember, Victorian society was all about order and respectability.
Right, and this John LePage,
Yeah.
he was actually described in the court records as a well-known character.
Well-known character. Okay, so maybe not always in a good way.
Probably not.
Yeah.
But it makes you wonder, why target the streetlights specifically?
And repeatedly, too.
Right, like it wasn't a one-time thing. The records say he was known for it.
I'm starting to think there's more to this John LePage than meets the eye.
Right, like what was going on in his head.
Well, unfortunately, we don't have a lot to go on in terms of his personal life, but we can speculate a little.
Let's speculate.
I love a good
Historical
Who
mystery.
doesn't? Okay, so thinking about the context, what do we know about Guernsey in the 1880s?
Well, it was a pretty small island community, right?
Very much so. And like much of Victorian society would have been very stratified.
Socially stratified.
Yeah. Big differences between the haves and the have-nots.
So maybe the page felt like he was on the outside looking in.
It's possible. Perhaps he saw those gaslights as a symbol of the establishment.
The very people who he felt ignored or marginalized by.
Exactly. And smashing them might have been his way of, making a statement.
A very literal lashing out.
A very public one, too. Remember, the article mentioned the lamp was near the town church.
Oh, right. So prime location.
Right in the heart of things.
Where everyone would see.
Exactly. So this wasn't just some random act of vandalism. This was deliberate.
It was a message.
A message that we're still trying to decipher.
Okay, so let's talk punishment.
Ah, yes. The consequences of LePage's actions.
4 weeks imprisonment, hard labor, and solitary confinement.
For a street lamp?
For a street lamp.
I mean, that sounds pretty harsh even for back then.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Makes you think, was this typical or was LePage made an example of?
Well, it's hard to say for sure without delving deeper into Guernsey's legal records from the time.
True.
But I think it says a lot about how they viewed property and social order.
Right. So like we were saying before, those gaslights weren't just objects.
They were symbols of progress of the town's prosperity.
And damaging them was seen as an attack on those very ideals.
Exactly. And Victorian society was obsessed with maintaining order.
Right. Everything in its place.
Precisely. So someone like LePage, who so brazenly defied that order,
It was a threat
a threat that needed to be dealt with swiftly and severely.
to deter others.
Precisely. The punishment had to fit the crime, but also send a message.
Don't mess with our lamps.
Don't mess with our lamps or our social order.
Wow. It makes you wonder, did LePage even understand the severity of his actions?
That is a fascinating question. I mean, we can't get inside his head, but it's definitely possible.
Like, what if he genuinely believed that the lamp was his property?
It's a stretch, but maybe. Or maybe it was just a desperate attempt at a defense.
Right, like, hey, I can't be punished for damaging my own stuff.
Exactly. But it also raises another interesting point. Did people back then view public property differently than we do today?
Ooh, That's a good question.
Like, did they have the same sense of shared ownership?
I don't know. Something to think about.
It is. It's almost like we're looking at two completely different worlds colliding in this case.
Yeah.
The world of John LePage.
Whatever that world was.
Right. And the world of the authorities who were trying to uphold their vision of a civilized society.
It's fascinating and kind of sad, too, when you think about it.
Yeah.
LePage may have been a misunderstood rebel, a frustrated citizen, or maybe just someone who was struggling.
And we'll probably never know for sure.
But his case definitely gives us a lot to think about.
It does. It highlights how dramatically our views on crime and punishment have evolved.
What was once a serious offense,
A threat to society,
is now, well, I doubt anyone today would face hard labor for smashing a streetlight.
not unless they did some serious damage.
Right. But the bigger question is, why has that shift happened?
Exactly. Is it because our laws have become more lenient?
Or have we developed a deeper understanding of human behavior and motivation?
I think it's a bit of both.
We recognize that there's nuance to every situation.
Right. People's actions aren't always black and white.
There are shades of gray.
Exactly. We've learned to differentiate between malicious intent and acts that might be driven by frustration, desperation, or even mental health issues.
And that nuance was likely absent in LePage's time.
It's hard to say for sure, but the historical record seems to suggest that.
It's almost like we're trying to piece together a puzzle with only a few pieces.
We are, but that's part of what makes history so intriguing.
It is. So we have this strange case of John LePage, a man who may have been a misunderstood rebel, a frustrated citizen, or maybe just someone with a very strong dislike of street lamps.
And we may never know the full story.
But it forces us to confront how much our understanding of crime and punishment has changed over time.
And how important context is when judging the actions of the past.
We can't view LePage's act in isolation.
We have to consider the social structures, the prevailing beliefs, and the limitations of understanding individual motivations that existed back then.
It's a reminder that history is rarely simple or straightforward.
There are always layers of complexity.
And on that note, I'm going to leave you with this. Imagine you're in that Guernsey courtroom.
Back in 1882.
You're tasked with defending John LePage.
What's your argument?
Criminal act or desperate cry for attention. Something to chew on. Until next time, keep exploring.
And keep those lights on.
And we'll see you on our next deep dive.
See you then.
Thanks for listening to the Guernsey Past Podcast. Look out for more podcasts soon. If you don't want to miss one, then please don't forget to subscribe.